Hello, this is the UNSDG Service Portal, and in this video I'm going to walk through what it is and what it does and the main features of the system. So this portal is actually currently live in Vietnam, in the local shared service center of Vietnam, and it was developed as a proof of concept for advancing the work of the local shared service centers when hosting entities make their services available. So if I log in here, this service is intended to be a central interface for users across the world to find services that are available to them, to the country that they are accessing from, but also to the functions that they perform. This portal is focused on connecting and leveraging existing UN systems and solutions that are their best in class. So there are many examples across the system on corporate solutions developed by several entities. And the approach adopted with this portal is to bring all of these together without re-engineering the processes and the systems that have been already developed and maintained by the entities, but to centralize their access and to smartly route the user requests to the relevant service providers. So it leverages all of the investments and effort that entities have put into their systems. It also enables them to focus on continually developing these solutions that they are experts at. So there will be a little bit more to that later on, but just to introduce the general overview of the portal, it is based on the ServiceNow system, which many of the UN system entities actually use to make available for service provision. So several of the major service providers in the system are using the exact same solution. On the top, there is a menu bar where you can come to the homepage. You can look at your draft service requests. You can look at your open and your closed cases. So if you need to check on a status or if you need to look at the history, the historical cases. For those users that have been assigned as fulfillers, so those that are fulfilling service requests, they will see this option here that takes them to the backend where they can deliver the services. And there's also a knowledge section where all the knowledge articles are available for accessing the system, using the system, understanding the services, their forms, their processes, etc. And this knowledge base is growing over time as questions arrive and as more countries are being onboarded and services being made available. There's also a user management section where users can edit their profile, for instance. On the main section of the page, we're welcomed with a greeting message that recognizes your user, your function, and also where you are accessing from, so what country you are associated with. This is important because the system understands these fields and will smartly route or make available the service catalogs available to you. So for instance, a procurement user or a procurement associate may have additional procurement items available to him or her because of that function. And depending on where that user is accessing it from, so for instance, Vietnam, it can be linked to a specific service provider. That can vary, of course, between countries. So next to this welcome message, there is a search box where the users can search for their services or knowledge articles. On the middle of the page, we have the 6 service lines that are available and all of the services are built or made available through these 6 service lines. In the bottom, there is another view for the users to check on their cases, so the open and closed cases. There is an approval section for those users that have approving rights, that they can quickly have an overview of cases that need their approval. And there's also the knowledge section for the top rated articles or the most used articles, so for quick access. So all of these are available elsewhere. This is shown here just to provide quick access. So in order to find and request a service, the user would generally identify the service line relevant. And here they're already greeted with the most popular items, and this list gets updated as services are requested. So they will become the usually most relevant services. They can switch between different catalogs, and they can drill into the categories. So on the administration service lines, there are 3 general categories. For instance, one called building maintenance management, and within building management, there are 5 services that they can request. Again, the visibility of the services in the catalog are dictated based on the user function and where they're accessing the portal from. So in this case, we can raise a cleaning request. So basically, the user will complete all of the information that is requested. They can see either, they can recognize that either by the red asterisk that shows the mandatory fields, or looking at on the right side on the fields that are missing the required information. So for instance, location. In this case, we can say that it's in the lobby, and we can select a certain floor. So this is on the ground floor, and the workspace is other. So in this case, the system is loaded already with information pertaining to this particular LSSC, the Vietnam LSSC. So you see it recognizes the locations that are available to deliver the service. Users can also request a date and a time for when that service should be rendered, for instance, and they will enter a description of the request. So in this case, it's a cleaning request. So requesting additional cleaning following an event, for instance. So the user can now either save as a draft, so adding to the wish list. In this case, it's not necessary, of course, but there are cases where additional information is required, forms, documents to be uploaded. They can pre-fill the form and save, or they can just submit. Another functionality of the system is that it recognizes the user that is accessing the system, but that user can also make a request on behalf of someone else. So this is it will be picked up directly from the user database and identifying the associated agency automatically. With additional integrations and additional work that are already scheduled, the system can make recommendations based on the user information. So for instance, it could already identify the location for that user, for instance, the workstation. So if I simply submit this ticket here, or this case, now we are faced with a confirmation that the case has been created. There is a case ID, and there are additional information shown based on the selections made in the previous page. I can check that the case is open and it was created just now. In here, there is a chat functionality where the requester and the fulfiller can communicate, and it will retain the entire history. So for instance, I've created this case and I can provide additional information. For instance, we can say that we will need to cleaners, for instance, and I'll send it. So this information is now added to that case and visible to the fulfiller. Now, once the case is created, it triggers the workflow for this process, for this service, notifying the relevant service desk or fulfiller group that you have created this type of case and that they can start working on your request. This will also trigger any associated SLAs or underlying tasks. So for certain services that require multiple tasks being followed as part of the process, this is all triggered automatically, and all of the relevant fulfillers are notified. If I navigate back to the home page and I want to check on my status, I can look at the open cases that I have. So for instance, I can see there's my cleaning request that I have just entered, and I'm faced back with the same page. I can attach additional documents. So for instance, if I had a picture or additional documentation requested by the fulfiller, I can include it in this case. And I can also, for instance, at some point, if I need to request a status update. All of these messages are being relayed back to the fulfillers. And before we move on to the fulfiller side of things, so those that are providing the service, let's just have a quick look at the knowledge base. So this here is just a demonstration of what the user the knowledge articles will look like. So for instance, I have an article on garden request. It outlines how to make that request, what informations are required, how to submit, etc. I can also look at if I go back, you can also look at my closed case, so historical cases here. You can see that the state is now closed complete. And then moving on to the fulfiller side of things. So I will just copy this case so we can identify it. As a fulfiller associated with the cleaning service, I would receive already a notification with a link that will take me directly to that case. And here I can access it directly. And I can find the service. So the service is shown here along with all the others. So for the fulfillers, the visual looks quite different. There are a lot more options. So essentially we can see that this is the case. It has been raised by this user. The state currently is open. We can update the case state. We can see the description and the short description that have been entered, the associated entity. And then also we can see that this particular item has been associated or sent to the facilities and maintenance group. It can be assigned to an individual within that group that should be responsible for completing that service, and it will become part of his or her pipeline of cases to resolve or services to render. So in here we can see all of the information that have been entered, including all of the messages that have been linked to that case. They can see the attachments, and they see the history overview with timestamps associated. Coming down, we can see that this particular service is tied to 8 business hour SLA, and by now 4 business minutes have elapsed. So the system does track the SLAs for the individual services that can be customized. So different services may have different SLAs. as well as different working schedules and different holiday schedules. So that should accommodate for the variety of use cases across the UN system. If there are any approvers associated to this workflow, they would be shown here. In this case, there aren't, as well as if there are any tasks associated. So in cases where, in order to render a service, multiple tasks are required, they will be displayed here. They will follow a similar workflow as I've just outlined, with associating the assignment groups and assigned individuals to complete those, and it will measure their own SLAs. So the fulfiller reviews this information, and if it's enough to render the services, they can just render the services and close the case. In case they need additional information, they can communicate with the requester using the additional comments box. So we can ask where exactly the lobby. And if we post this, this will be visible to the end user. They will be notified that there is a message. They can also enter work notes, which are not visible to the end users, but are meant to exchange information between the fulfillers, also for future cases. So they can add notes that will be retained with this case, but that will not be visible to the end users. You can add whatever comments. And posting this only posts it internally, and that's shown with the yellow ribbon. Once the information is provided by the end user, it will be posted here. The fulfiller will be notified, and hopefully he or she can then render the services. And they can, for instance, as they are working, in this case, this cleaning request, as they go to provide the service, they can update this case to being a work in progress. When the service is completed, they will just say the state is completed. Now, at this point in time, the system will pause the SLA, showing exactly how long it took. It will also track any changes in state. So if this case has had multiple changes in state, we can see that as well. And it will retain all of the history here, and the user will be notified that the service has been provided and that they will be able to see it in their closed cases. The system also has dashboards and reports available. So as an example, these are simplified versions, as this system is a proof of concept. These dashboards can be customized as, for instance, group specific or for the management of the local shared service center. So all of the KPIs and the visuals displayed can be customized to tailor to the specific audience. So in this case, we have operation case dashboard, which shows all of the cases and their state. So there are 750 new cases in this test environment, 66 in progress, 174 closed. And these are the breakdown by their states in a visual format and by assignment group. So in this test environment, you can see that there are 390 cases associated with the facilities and maintenance group. There are additional dashboards available. Again, it's this is completely customizable at an office and user levels as well. So templates can be developed and made available to an entire set of users or made for individual needs. Once the service has been delivered, the user is notified that the case is now closed, and they receive a message asking them to rate their satisfaction with the service provision. So they can take a short survey, and their responses are tracked and associated with each of the cases. So they can rate on a scale of very satisfied to a very unsatisfied in a visual format. And they can also enter comments on to contextualize their rating. These comments and ratings can be displayed, can be found for each individual case. They're associated, so a review can be done if necessary at a later point to try and understand why was the service rated as such and whether any changes need to take place to improve service quality. So in here, currently this shows that there are 243 surveys sent, 19 have been completed, and 224 were canceled because of their age. The users have not completed the survey before a certain amount of time. And in here, this is the distribution by score. So from 1 to 5, so very unsatisfied, very satisfied to very unsatisfied. And in this case, again, a demo environment, 58% rated this as 5. Going back to the end user facing view, I can look at the case which is now closed. Oh, sorry, I saved that as a work in progress. And I can see the comments that have been posted. Because I'm an admin user, I'm talking to myself, so all of the chat bubbles come on the same side. But we'll see a case in just a moment where we will see this exchange between users. And then, of course, being an administrator, I can see the internal work notes. Now, if we can show, sorry, what we'll see now is actually one of the key concepts that we've tried to illustrate and to demonstrate that the system can deliver. And at the beginning of this recording, I've mentioned that the approach was to leverage existing solutions across the UN system and to make them available to the LSSCs. With this approach, we are able to connect or integrate to the existing solutions, and we can route requests or dynamically route requests based on which services are available in each location to what type of user, and depending, of course, on who's providing that service. So as a proof of concept, we have integrated our UNSDG Service Portal instance with a copy of another entity's system, and we demonstrate that through a procurement request. So in this case, we know that this particular entity has a very well developed process and system to deliver procurement services. So rather than developing the entire service and workflow associated in this environment, what is actually happening here is that this exact service, as it is shown in the service provider's instance, is available for the users to make requests. So in here, they would enter all of the relevant information. Again, the form looks completely different. In this case, many of these pieces of information, they have been disabled for demonstration purposes. But we can, for instance, enter request name, so procurement of a mobile phone, for instance, and we can describe, I need to procure a mobile phone for my supervisor. There are additional fields for descriptions. Again, this is linked to how this service is actually handled in the service provider's system. So it looks exactly the same. And we can add some they would like an iPhone, for instance. So once this is complete, I can submit the request. And in this case, the request is raised as it would, as we've seen in the cleaning request. But right now you can see that there were additional comments posted to this message. The yellow ones are only displayed because of my administrator rights, and they are meant to kind of contextualize the connection that is happening between environments. And this is not going to be visible to the end user. But what they will see here is this comment saying that the case was created successfully in the target environment with this case number. So essentially what is happening is that this transaction is being recorded in this system for reporting purposes and is exchanging with the target environment, aka the service provider. And it tells us what the case ID that has been generated in that environment. So when it comes to reporting, we are able to track which services were raised and who has fulfilled them. And we're able to track their ID. On the other side, the service provider understands that this request actually did not come from their system, it came from the service portal, and they are able to see the associated ID. So the one highlighted here is the ID available, or the ID related to the service provider, their own internal ID. And this ID shown here is the service portal own ID. So quickly hopping on to that service provider portal. Again, this is a demo. It's just meant to illustrate the functionality of the system. So in here, I'm directly coming into the fulfiller view. Once that case is created, it is created in the service provider system. The relevant fulfillers are going to be notified. The relevant SLAs are going to be triggered and start tracking the progress, and they will be able to see that case being created. So in here, we can see that in this environment, they have received that request. That was a procurement of a mobile phone. They will be able to, so the fulfiller will follow a very similar process to what we've just seen. Now, there are differences because the workflow for fulfilling this particular service is different, but the overall functionalities are the same. And in here, we have the options, as we've just seen, to see the messages that have been exchanged between systems. We can see the system ID, so essentially which environment created this case, and the originating case ID. So this information is also available in the service portal, as we will see in just a moment, thereby linking this exact same case across two systems. So in here, I've just reviewed, or the procurement associate, for instance, has reviewed the request. They would like an iPhone, but we need to understand what model of iPhone, right? So they need more information. So without ever leaving, let's say pro or non-pro, without ever leaving their own environment, they're able to receive the request, to review it, to take action, and to exchange with the end user. So in this case, we need more information, so we're going to make that post, and we're asking the end user what kind of model, what model of iPhone, and you can see that it has been created and that we have a message from the system saying that the originating environment, therefore the service portal, has been updated to reflect this information. So returning to the service portal where originated this request, we can see the comment from the fulfiller, and that was asking for what kind of iPhone. And in this case, we can say it's a Pro model, please. And I can respond. As you can see, the information has been successfully posted to the service fulfiller to the service fulfiller environment. And we can see it looks just like a chat. So if I hop on over to back to the fulfiller side, they have now, the end user has entered the information, and we can see that the information is displayed here instantly without ever having to leave or refresh this page. So the fulfiller can then deliver the services, and can update. So let's say that has been procured and has been delivered. So they close the case. And in this environment, now the end user that originated the request will receive a notification that the service has been completed, and you can see that the state is now reflected as close complete. So this shows this seamless integration between the service portal and an existing solution without ever having to recode and redevelop the workflows and processes and additional integrations that happen at the fulfiller side. So we know many entities have their own case management systems, such as this one, that have tight integrations with their ERP systems and other systems. Our solution leverages what they have already developed and have in place and expands that to the whole system. As the catalogs grow and as more integrations are made available, the system as a whole will benefit, as the catalog is available to all and can be updated based on the local shared services center's needs. So this was, I think, a quick introduction to the system, to the approach, demonstrating some of the key features. And happy to engage if there are any other questions on or any other open points that haven't been addressed here.